It was a Wednesday like any other, the kind of midweek gray where everything feels slightly muted. I remember the sky was overcast, the kind that never fully commits to raining but keeps you guessing. Work had been its usual blur, calls, spreadsheets, emails about meetings that could have been emails. By the time noon hit, I was too burned out to pretend to be productive. So I did what I usually did on days like that. Grabbed my coat, slipped out of the office, and walked the 8 blocks to a cafe I'd been going to for years. The place wasn't fancy. No imported espresso beans or trendy seasonal syrups. Just good coffee, quiet jazz on the speakers, and a barista named Carla who remembered your order after 2 visits. It was the kind of place you went when you didn't want to talk or think too hard, when you just needed to sit and exhale. I stood in line, debating between my usual or switching it up with something seasonal, when I noticed her. Lauren, my wife. She was sitting by the window, facing the street, fingers wrapped around a coffee cup. Her posture was relaxed, almost delicate, the way it got when she was with people she felt comfortable around. She hadn't seen me. At her table were 2 women I recognized vaguely from social media posts, her work friends, I assumed. They were mid-laugh, and Lauren tossed her head back the way she always did when she was trying to seem carefree. I don't know why I didn't walk over. Maybe I didn't want to interrupt. Maybe some part of me sensed I was about to hear something I wasn't meant to. Maybe I was just tired and didn't want to play the role of husband for 5 minutes. So I stayed where I was, 3 people from the counter, and watched her from behind the chalkboard menu. And then she said it, clear as day, over the hum of conversation and the clink of mugs. I need someone stronger than him, someone who knows what he wants. Laughter stopped. Not all of it, just hers. The other 2 forced out a few half-hearted chuckles, but their smiles tightened. One of them glanced around the cafe like she hoped no one had heard. Lauren just sipped her drink and looked out the window. And then, with that same forced casualness people use when they realize they've said something too loud, she added, I mean the main character in the book, not James. That made them laugh again. Louder this time. One of them nodded quickly, like she was desperate to keep things light. Oh God. The one on the left said, You scared me for a second. But I wasn't laughing. I was still stuck on those first words. I need someone stronger than him. That could have meant anything if it wasn't so specific. If it wasn't so us. I don't know how long I stood there, staring past the back of someone's head. My order was probably called. Maybe someone bumped into me. I don't remember. The only thing I remember is walking out, quietly without drawing attention, and sitting in my car a block away, keys in hand but engine off. I stared at the dashboard, not really thinking, just listening, to the silence, to the low thud of my heartbeat in my ears, to the muffled noise of downtown traffic outside the windows. Every few seconds, I'd glance at the screen of my phone like I expected something to appear. And eventually it did. A message from Lauren. No text, just a picture. Her coffee cup on the table half full. The sleeve had a little smiley face doodled on it, probably from the barista. Caption: A little daydream during lunch, hot beverage, thought balloon. I stared at it for a long time. There were so many ways I could have responded. A casual, looks nice. Or a joking, did you finish the book? Or even just a heart emoji. But I didn't send anything. I didn't know how to lie in that moment. Not even politely. On the drive back to work, I kept hearing her voice in my head. The way she said it. The softness of it. Wrapped in casual words but lined with something colder. Something real. It was like hearing your name in a dream just before you wake up. And realizing someone had been whispering it all along. I told myself maybe I misheard. That maybe it was nothing. But you know when something hits too clean to be a coincidence? When it lands in that exact spot that already feels sore. That's what it felt like. And that's when it started. Not the suspicion. Not the anger. Just the quiet, creeping awareness that something was off. Like the moment you realize you've been walking with a pebble in your shoe. Not painful enough to limp, just enough to bother you. Just enough to make you wonder how long it's been there. Lauren and I had been married for 7 years. We met in college, one of those study group turned something more stories. She was always the sharper one. quicker with a comeback, better at reading people. I admired that. Sometimes I envied it. I was more quiet, more steady. The type of guy who learned how to fix things before asking for help. We'd built a life together that looked good from the outside. Apartment with a view, decent jobs, a dog we both spoiled. We had routines, movie nights, brunches with friends, matching mugs with our initials. But lately, I don't know, something had shifted. She got colder. Not in a cruel way, just less reachable. Like someone turning the volume down on a radio you didn't realize was even playing. It wasn't a fight. It wasn't cheating, not as far as I knew. It was more like a long pause in the middle of a sentence. One you're still waiting for someone to finish. That moment in the cafe didn't make me angry. It made me alert. Like something I'd been half sleeping through had finally snapped me awake. That night, she came home like nothing happened. Kicked off her shoes. Complained about traffic. Said she was starving and asked if I wanted to order Thai. I said sure. We ate on the couch and watched an episode of a show we'd already seen. She scrolled through her phone. I pretended to care about the plot. At one point I asked, "Did you end up finishing that book?" She looked up, surprised. Like she forgot I even knew she was reading anything. "Oh, yeah. This afternoon." It ended kind of weird, but I liked it. Was the main character likable? She laughed. Not really. He was sort of all over the place. Self-absorbed. Thought he was deep when he was just moody. "Huh. You'd hate him." I smiled. "Good to know." She leaned over and kissed my cheek. "You're too consistent. That's your superpower." Then she got up to put the dishes in the sink. And I just sat there, staring at the black screen of the paused TV, wondering if that was a compliment or a curse. The next morning, I woke up before her and watched her sleep for a second. Felt like spying. Like she belonged to a moment I wasn't invited into. There was no fight, no confrontation, no plan. Just a quiet, growing distance. And a single sentence I couldn't unhear. "I need someone stronger than him." She'd say later she was talking about a book. But I knew better. Because even in fiction, truth has a way of slipping out. Especially when you think no one's listening. The human brain has a weird way of protecting itself. It smooths over the rough edges of what we don't want to see. It turns sharp instincts into harmless coincidences. It downplays things because to admit otherwise, to really admit what's in front of you, means your life changes. And change, even when it's overdue, is terrifying. But once you hear something like what Lauren said in that cafe, it's like your ears tune differently. Suddenly, you're not just remembering. You're reprocessing, reframing. The night after the cafe, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling fan. The blades kept turning, slow and steady, casting faint moving shadows across the room. Lauren was already asleep beside me, breathing softly. For a moment, I let myself pretend everything was fine, that I hadn't heard what I heard, that the last few months weren't building toward something. But I couldn't unhear it. And when I closed my eyes, I started remembering things I hadn't thought about in weeks. Or maybe things I'd chosen not to, like the time she came home from work at midnight. I had been half asleep, blurry-eyed, when I asked how the meeting went. She kissed the top of my head and said, "Exhausting. Don't ask." Then she went straight to the shower, even though she usually just collapsed into bed when she was tired. I remember hearing her in there, whispering to herself. Not singing, not humming, whispering. At the time, she told me she was rehearsing a monologue for an acting class she wanted to take, but she never mentioned it again. Or the time she asked me to send her a picture of myself at home, just out of nowhere. "It's silly," she said. "I'm trying this mindfulness thing. Grounding exercises. Helps when I'm anxious." I'd laughed and sent her a selfie in my sweatpants, holding a bowl of cereal like a trophy. But afterward, something about the request felt odd. She never mentioned anxiety before. And what kind of grounding exercise requires a time-stamped photo? I told myself I was overthinking it, that she was just quirky, that couples do weird things. But now, every memory came with a new shadow, like the way she started locking her phone the moment I walked into the room. Or the new lingerie she never wore around me. The gym membership she signed up for but never invited me to join. "It's just my little escape," she said once, laughing. "Don't make it a couple's thing." And those calls, always from a number not saved in her contacts. Always dismissed with a vague wrong number, or, "It's just someone from work." Once, the call came in at 11:13 p.m. We were watching a documentary, and she had the blanket pulled over her legs. When the phone buzzed, she barely glanced at it, muted the screen and said, "Ugh, client from hell." But she didn't pick up. She didn't even look bothered. I remember thinking at the time that her reaction was too calm, like it had happened before. Then there were the gifts. Little things, scarves, books, skincare products that she claimed were from clients. "One of the perks of being in brand consulting," she joked. "People love bribing you into loyalty." But I never once saw a thank you note or a follow-up email. And when I asked if I could come to one of her networking events, she always had an excuse. The deeper I thought, the more things unraveled. Her tone when I asked questions. Light, playful, a little teasing, but layered with something else. Dismissiveness. Deflection. A kind of emotional jujitsu that made me feel like I was the paranoid one. But I wasn't. Not anymore. That night, I got out of bed and walked to the living room. I sat on the couch in the dark and pulled out my phone, opened the Notes app, and started listing everything. Every moment, every off comment, every excuse I'd swallowed out of convenience. I didn't know what I was doing. I just knew I needed to see it in one place, to stop letting it float around like noise. Here's what I had by the time the sun came up. March 14th. Work dinner ran past midnight. Wouldn't show me the group photo she claimed they took. Said it got deleted. March 29th. Phone call at 11:13 p.m. Unknown number. No reaction. April 2nd. Asked me for a selfie out of nowhere while she was at work. April 8th. Found new perfume in the bathroom, different from her usual scent. When I asked, she said it was a free sample. April 16th. Came home in gym clothes but didn't smell like sweat. Hair wasn't tied up. Said she'd just walked in. April 22nd. Lingerie tags in the trash. Never saw the items. When asked, she laughed and said she returned them. I stopped there. Not because I ran out of memories, but because I realized I could go on for hours. It wasn't one thing. It was everything. The truth is, people don't wake up one day and become strangers. It happens slowly, gradually, like rust, like a slow leak you don't hear until the floor warps. And by the time you notice it, the damage is already done. Over the next few days, I paid more attention. I didn't confront her. I didn't ask loaded questions. I just watched. When she texted, I noticed how her fingers hovered, how she tilted the screen away from me. When she laughed at something on her phone, I asked what was funny. She'd say just a meme, but never show me. Once, she left her laptop open when she went to take a call. I glanced at the screen. Chrome browser. Incognito mode. What were we hiding? We used to share playlists. Now her Spotify account was private. Her location sharing had been turned off on her phone, though I hadn't noticed until then. When I asked casually, "Hey, did you disable Find My?" She blinked and said, "Huh, must have happened when I updated, right?" She had an answer for everything. And that was the problem. When someone stops telling you the truth, it's not always because they're trying to hurt you. Sometimes, they're just trying to protect the version of themselves they want to believe still exists. But I wasn't sure that version of Lauren was still real. And if she wasn't showing up at home anymore. Then something else happened. I was folding laundry, hers specifically, when I noticed a small, folded receipt tucked into the back pocket of a pair of jeans. Normally, I wouldn't snoop, but nothing felt normal anymore. The receipt was from a restaurant. A nice one. Riverside Bistro 2 towns over. It wasn't dated for a weekend. It was from a Tuesday. 2 entrees. A bottle of Pinot Noir. Dessert. One guest was marked as gluten-free. Lauren's gluten-sensitive. She told me that night she was meeting a friend from college for drinks. Someone she hadn't seen in years. She came home smelling like wine and said they'd stayed at the bar the whole time, just catching up. But Riverside wasn't a bar. It was the kind of place you made reservations for. I Googled the restaurant, looked at photos, looked at the layout. Then I checked her Instagram. No post, no story, no check-in, just radio silence. It made no sense, unless it made perfect sense. That night, she asked if I wanted to go away for the weekend. "We've been kind of off lately," she said, curling up beside me. "I feel like we need a reset, somewhere quiet, just us." I looked at her, really looked. She still smiled the same, still said, "I love you," every time we hung up the phone. Still brought home snacks she knew I liked. But something in her eyes had changed. Maybe guilt, maybe calculation, or maybe, worst of all, just detachment. I agreed to the weekend trip. Said it sounded great. She smiled and kissed me, and for a second, I almost believed her again. But deep down, I knew this wasn't about reconnection. It was about control, distraction, buying time. Because when people feel you pulling away, they either lean in or pull harder in the other direction. And Lauren had always been good at making the first move. By Friday morning, I had made peace with something I didn't want to admit. I was no longer just suspicious. I was certain. There's a moment, somewhere between instinct and evidence, where your gut and your brain finally align, where doubt becomes clarity, and clarity becomes resolve. And for me, that moment came not in a dramatic explosion, but in the silence between text messages, in the spaces where love used to live, in the way Lauren had started to say good night without touching me, without even turning toward me in bed. So when she told me she'd be out late that evening for a friend's bachelorette party, I nodded like everything was fine, said I hoped she had fun. She was wearing a deep green dress that clung in a way she usually reserved for date nights with me. Her makeup was heavier than usual. Her hair curled, not straightened, something she only did when she wanted to feel noticed. She spritzed on perfume as she passed through the hallway, a scent I didn't recognize. "Don't wait up," she called, almost casually. As the door clicked shut behind her, I didn't, but I also didn't stay put. The coat was the excuse. About an hour after she left, I realized she'd left it in the back seat of my car. The one she wore everywhere, even in warmer weather, half out of habit, half because it had sentimental value. I figured I'd drop it off. Just a small gesture. That's what I told myself. But what I was really doing was testing her. She had said the party was at a coworker's place, someone I didn't know well. I typed the address she gave me into Google Maps and drove. The streets were quiet, mostly residential. Lights on in a few windows, music faintly drifting from one backyard. But Lauren's car wasn't there. I passed the house twice just to be sure. I parked at the corner, hands still on the wheel, and stared at the house like it might give me answers. Then, without really thinking, I opened Find My. The icon for her phone popped up instantly. She hadn't disconnected from our shared iCloud, probably forgot, or assumed I never checked. Her location wasn't anywhere near the address she gave me. She was downtown, on the riverfront, at a hotel. I remember staring at the little blue dot on the screen, unmoving, frozen, not in fear, not even in anger, just disbelief. It was 10:42 p.m. I turned the key, shifted into drive, and headed toward the river. The hotel was familiar, too familiar. We had stayed there once, early in our marriage, during a random weekend getaway. Back when everything still felt new and easy and full of shared plans. I parked a few blocks away and walked. The lobby was warmly lit, buzzing softly with music and the clink of glasses from the bar. The woman at the front desk glanced up as I entered. Young, polite, professional. "Can I help you, sir?" I hesitated, then smiled, calm and rehearsed. "Yeah." My wife left her ID in the room. She asked me to bring her something. Room number 428, under Lauren Kessler. She nodded without suspicion. One moment, and just like that, she gave it to me. Room 428. 4th floor. Corner suite. I took the elevator alone. Each floor ding felt like a countdown. My stomach wasn't in knots, it was something tighter than that. Something heavier. Not the fear of what I might see. The fear that I already knew what I would. The hallway smelled like new carpet and cleaning solution. I walked slowly, counting the room numbers until I reached it. The door was slightly ajar. Not wide open, just enough that it hadn't latched completely. A sliver of warm light spilled out into the hallway, along with the faint sound of music. I stood there, not moving. I don't know how long I waited. 10 seconds? A full minute? Couldn't tell. Eventually, I pushed gently. The door eased open with barely a sound. Inside, the lights were low. A bottle of wine rested on the table, 2 glasses beside it. Her coat. My coat, the one I was supposedly dropping off, was folded neatly on the chair. And there she was, Lauren, on the bed, in a nightgown I'd never seen before. Silk, emerald-colored, slipping off one shoulder. Her hair slightly undone. Her legs curled toward the man beside her. He was holding her, one arm wrapped casually around her waist, fingers tracing a pattern on her side. His face was unfamiliar, broad-shouldered, clean-shaven, relaxed, like he belonged there. On the nightstand beside them, a key card sat half-tucked beneath a phone. The screen lit up briefly, just long enough for me to catch the name. His last name, which matched the monogrammed luggage resting against the far wall. She laughed at something he whispered, tilted her head back and let it out in full. Then her eyes shifted. She saw me, and in that instant, something in her face cracked wide open. Shock, panic, not guilt, not yet, just surprise. Like she'd been caught doing something she wasn't ashamed of, just hadn't planned on being seen. She bolted upright. The man froze. She reached for the blanket, covering herself, rushing toward the edge of the bed. James! I didn't let her finish. I didn't yell, didn't step inside, didn't even blink. I just turned and walked. The hallway seemed longer on the way back. The elevator slower. My legs didn't shake. My breathing didn't falter. Everything felt still, detached, like I was watching it unfold from someone else's body. In the parking garage, I leaned against my car, staring at the windshield. A thin layer of dust had gathered. Someone had drawn a heart in the grime with their finger. Probably a kid. I wiped it away with my sleeve. Then I sat down, shut the door, and just stared. Not at anything. Just into the nothingness that comes when the reality you've been clinging to suddenly collapses in on itself. My phone buzzed. Once. Then again. Lauren calling. I didn't pick up. She texted. Please. It's not what it looked like. Can we talk? Please. Come back. I turned off the screen. At some point, I started driving. I don't remember the first few turns. Only that I took the long way home, past the places we used to go when things were still good. The park near the lake. The diner where we had our first real fight and laughed about it 5 minutes later. The bridge where she once told me she wanted to grow old with me. None of it meant anything anymore, because all it takes is one night, one decision, one glimpse of the truth, unfiltered and undeniable, and everything changes. I got home close to 1 a.m. The apartment was exactly as I'd left it. A glass on the kitchen counter. The scent of her shampoo lingering faintly in the bathroom. I didn't clean anything up. Didn't check my phone. I sat on the edge of the bed for a long time, staring at the space she usually slept in. And that's when I realized something strange. I didn't feel heartbreak. Not yet. What I felt was absence. Like the emotional tether had finally snapped, and all that was left was weightlessness. Not freedom. Not grief. Just emptiness. The kind that comes after a storm, before you realize how much was destroyed. I didn't sleep. By morning, I had already changed every password to every shared account. I rerouted her email access, locked the bank app, revoked shared cloud drives. Every photo we'd taken in the past 2 years, I backed up for myself. Then wiped the shared folder. Her texts kept coming. They got shorter, more frantic. Talk to me. It wasn't what you think. I didn't plan for this to happen. I still love you, but none of them changed anything. Because love doesn't survive secrecy. Love doesn't survive lies dressed up as silence. And it sure as hell doesn't survive seeing the person you trusted most wrapped around someone else in a room that once meant something to both of you. I didn't call her. I didn't answer. I just waited. Waited for her to come home and see for herself what she'd actually broken. What she'd really done. And when she did, I was ready. She walked in around 8:13 a.m. I was already up, seated at the kitchen table with a black coffee going cold in front of me. I hadn't slept, hadn't changed clothes, just sat there sorting through every second of the night before on an endless loop. So detailed it felt like I'd watched it in slow motion, frame by frame. Lauren opened the door slowly, like she wasn't sure if it would still unlock. Her heels clicked softly on the floor as she stepped inside. She paused when she saw me. The air changed. "James," she said, voice small, tired. "Can we talk?" I didn't look up right away. I just nodded once. Not because I wanted to hear her out, but because I needed to see what she'd try first, excuse or apology. She walked over, set her purse on the counter, and stood across from me. "I don't even know where to start," she said. So I didn't say anything. She kept talking. "I didn't plan for any of this to happen," she said. It was a mistake. One night, I swear to God. I didn't know how to stop it. I raised my eyes then, met hers, steady. "One night?" I asked quietly. Her face tensed. "Yes, James. I know how it looked, but it's not like that. I was drinking and it was stupid and it's not who I am. I swear." "His name was on the key card," I interrupted, flat. "Same last name on his luggage. You were comfortable there." She blinked. "What? You've been seeing him for a while." "No," she said quickly, too quickly. "No, I haven't. You're wrong." "Then tell me his name." She hesitated, just long enough to confirm what I already knew. When she spoke again, her voice cracked. "James, please. I know I hurt you. I hate myself for it. But we can fix this. We can come back from this if you just give me a chance." I looked around the room then, at the wall clock, at the framed photo of us on the bookshelf, taken 2 summers ago in Chicago. Her arm slung around my waist, both of us laughing at something the photographer said. A perfect **T of a life that, now I realized, was already crumbling back then. I stood up, walked to the balcony door, and opened it. The morning air was cool, crisp, still laced with early autumn. I didn't say anything at first, just let the silence expand. Behind me, I heard her pacing. "James." I held up a hand. "Don't. Please." "No." She stopped. "I'm not going to yell," I said. "Not going to scream. You've already taken enough of my energy." She stepped toward me. "So what, you're just going to leave? That's it?" "No," I said. "I'm not leaving." I turned to face her. "You are." Her face crumpled in disbelief, like the idea hadn't even occurred to her that she might be the one packing a bag. She opened her mouth to argue, but the look I gave her stopped the words before they came. "You don't get to cheat, lie, and then expect to stay," I said. "That's not how this works. That's not who I am." "It was a mistake," she said again, eyes filling with tears. "I didn't mean to hurt you. I still love you." I stared at her, not in hatred, not even sadness, just clarity. "You don't cheat on people you love," I said. "You cheat on people you've already decided to leave. You just didn't have the decency to say it out loud." She started to cry then, not the delicate kind, not the movie scene tears. These were messy, desperate, full-body sobs. She fell to her knees and covered her face, shoulders shaking. And for a long second I just stood there and watched, and I felt nothing. No pity, no anger, no rush of old feelings bubbling back up. Just nothing. I had been emptied, hollowed out, and now I was ready to start filling myself with something real again. While she cried on the kitchen floor, I grabbed the boxes I'd packed the night before. They were already stacked by the door. Her clothes, her shoes, her office supplies, her extra charger, her books. I had spent the early hours of the morning sorting through our apartment piece by piece, separating what was hers and what wasn't. It felt mechanical at the time, just something to do to keep my hands busy. But now I realized it was my first real decision. My first step. "You need to take these today," I said. She didn't look up. "I'll be gone this afternoon. You have until 5. She finally raised her face, red and blotchy. "You're really doing this?" "I'm not doing anything," I said. "You did this." She crawled toward me, grabbed my hand, her eyes pleading. "James, please. I'll go to therapy. I'll do whatever it takes. I can't lose you." I pulled my hand away, slowly but firmly. "You already did." By 11 a.m. I had packed a duffel bag and loaded it into my car. I didn't have a new place yet, but that didn't matter. I had already called a friend with a loft across town. He'd agreed to let me crash for a while. Before I left, I sat at the dining table one last time. I opened my laptop, changed the passwords to every joint account, removed her access, forwarded important documents to a new personal email. Then I opened our shared bank app. Every penny we had saved split between 2 names. I moved to a new account under mine alone. She had no claim yet, no legal leverage. I wasn't stealing. I was protecting what she had already put at risk. And then I closed everything. I stood in the center of the living room and took one last look around. Every framed photo, every piece of furniture we'd picked out together. They all felt like props now, like the set of a life that had finished its final performance. I walked out, closed the door behind me, didn't look back. By Monday morning, I was in a new place. High ceilings, exposed brick, unfurnished, but clean. I spent the first night on a borrowed air mattress, eating takeout straight from the container. It should have felt depressing, but it didn't. Felt quiet, free. No eyes watching me from across the room. No lies drifting between the questions. No pressure to pretend. Just space. I turned on some music, old jazz records I hadn't played in years, and let the sound fill the room. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was playing a part in someone else's story. I wasn't trying to be the perfect husband. I wasn't trying to earn anyone's love. I was just there. And that was enough. Lauren tried calling. Multiple times. She texted, emailed, even sent a handwritten letter to my friend's address. I didn't block her yet. Not out of mercy, but because I wanted to keep a record. I read every message like I was studying a case file. Detached. Analytical. Watching her cycle through every stage of damage control. First came confusion. "Can we please talk? I don't understand why you're doing this." Then guilt. "I know I messed up, but we're more than this. Don't throw it all away." Then deflection. "We've both been distant. I wasn't happy either. You ignored me for months." Then panic. "Please, James, don't shut me out. I'll lose everything. I can't breathe." And finally, silence, which oddly enough was the loudest part of all. I hired a lawyer that same week. I didn't tell her, just started the paperwork. Quiet, clean. I wasn't interested in a fight. I didn't want revenge. I didn't want to burn her world down. I just wanted mine back. Even if it was scorched and stripped bare. I'd build again. From nothing if I had to. Because starting over alone is still better than building on a foundation that was already cracked. The last thing I did before bed that week was stand in front of the mirror and look at myself. Really look. Not with judgment. Not with pity. Just recognition. I saw the lines around my eyes. The tiredness. The weight I hadn't realized I was carrying. I saw the man I'd become. Quiet, thoughtful, patient to a fault. But not weak. Not anymore. "I'm done," I whispered. Not to her. To the version of myself that thought love meant tolerance. That thought loyalty meant silence. That thought strength meant staying. I thought I had already walked through the fire. Thought the worst was behind me. That once I closed the door on Lauren and stepped into that bare, echoing loft, the damage was contained. Isolated. That the betrayal was emotional, personal. Something between two people who once promised better and failed each other. But that was before I opened the email from the bank. It was a Tuesday, early afternoon. I was working from the dining table of my new apartment, still living out of a duffel bag and rotating through the same 3 outfits. My phone buzzed. I glanced at the notification and felt the air shift around me. Subject: Suspicious Activity Alert, Investment Account. I clicked. Inside was a breakdown from the bank's fraud department. Someone had attempted to change the authentication method on our joint investment portfolio, a 6-figure account we'd built over years. The request had come through 2 days ago. From a device registered under Lauren's name. There was no mistake. The location ping matched the area near her office. Attached was a log of the access attempt. Not just a password change request, but a full security override. Authorization changes. Email rerouting. Even an attempt to switch the account's ownership credentials. She hadn't just cheated. She was trying to clean out our future. I didn't respond to the bank right away. I needed to think. I closed my laptop and stared out the window at nothing. My heart wasn't racing. My palms weren't sweaty. It was something worse. Stillness. The kind that comes when everything you believed about a person has to be burned down and re-examined. Not just as a failed partner, but as a threat. This wasn't desperation. It wasn't a panicked move made by someone trying to survive the aftermath of a ruined marriage. It was planned, strategic, methodical. That's when the real dread settled in. Not that Lauren had tried to steal money, but that maybe she never intended to stay with me at all. I still had her old laptop. She'd left it behind in the rush to gather her things. Probably figured it was useless since she'd switched to a newer model. She'd always been careless about tech, assuming I'd be the one to set it up, fix it, wipe it, recycle it. She never changed the password. I powered it up. At first, everything looked normal. Desktop wallpaper from a trip we took to Maine. Folders labeled work, receipts, taxes. I clicked through, slowly, searching for anything that didn't fit. And then I found a folder buried 3 levels deep inside her personal directory. It was labeled Reflections_2023. I clicked. Inside, dozens of files. PDFs, Word docs, audio recordings. Some were encrypted, but many weren't. The more I opened, the colder I felt. These weren't diary entries. They were logs, plans, emails and message drafts between her and someone named only as D. The first few messages were benign. Frustrated rants about our marriage, vague complaints about me being emotionally closed off. Could have lived with that. No marriage is spotless. But then they escalated. D. You need to protect yourself. If he flips the narrative, you'll lose. Start documenting now. Lauren. I'm already working on that. I've been recording some arguments, clipping things that make me look cornered. D. Perfect. Make it seem like he's volatile. Even just emotionally. We'll build a pattern. Lauren. Yeah. And I told him I wanted a selfie last week. He didn't question it. Said it helps me with grounding exercises. D. Good. Build a trail. We'll position it like you've been walking on eggshells for years. My hands were shaking, but I kept reading. There were outlines, scripts, a step-by-step list on how to communicate emotional neglect during mediation, a template for filing a restraining order just in case, copies of emails she drafted but never sent, letters to a lawyer she referred to by first name only. And then I found the worst one. A transcript of one of our real arguments. The kind every couple has. We were arguing about something small, money, I think. I barely raised my voice. But she had cut the audio file down to 30 seconds, removing all context. Just me, frustrated, saying something sharp like, I don't want to talk about this again. Next to it was a bullet point summary. Aggressive tone. Refused to communicate. Stonewalling pattern. This could work if we need to show escalation. This could work. Like it was a business pitch. Like I was the story. I closed the laptop, sat there in silence, and realized I had never been in a relationship. Not really. I had been in a campaign. And the person I thought I'd loved hadn't just walked away. She'd been constructing an exit strategy. One built on lies, manipulation, and the complete rewriting of who I was. The next day, I met with my lawyer. I showed him everything, bank logs, emails, *TS. He read in silence, nodding occasionally. "She was setting you up," he said finally. "If you hadn't left when you did, she could have flipped this entire thing on you. Emotional abuse claims, financial control accusations. She was preloading the narrative. She tried to take the account," I said. "She almost succeeded." He sighed. "You're lucky. Most people don't find this stuff until it's too late." He paused. "Do you want to go nuclear?" I thought about that and nodded. "Yes, but not loudly. I want her to know I know, and I want her to feel it." He smiled. "Then let's build a timeline. Truth speaks loudest when it's documented." Over the next 3 days, we went to work. I gathered everything: texts, emails, location pings, call logs. I went back and pulled old calendar invites, receipts, photos. I built a master file of every inconsistency, every fake story, every false timestamp, every overlapping excuse. Then we sent letters. One to Lauren, one to her lawyer, and, most importantly, one to the man she had been coordinating with. D. We knew his full name now. He wasn't just some friend. He was an attorney, someone she had worked with on a project last year. He wasn't officially representing her. Not on paper. But the messages made it clear. He had been giving her play-by-play advice on how to dismantle me legally, piece by piece. The moment our letter landed on his desk, outlining everything we had, including his own communications, he dropped her. Cold. The next day, I received a terse email from Lauren's email address. Subject: Settlement and representation. I understand you've secured counsel. I will be seeking separate legal advice moving forward. Please direct all communications through your attorney. No apology. No explanation. Just retreat. But it wasn't over. I wasn't done. I forwarded the timeline, edited for tone, to a few carefully selected people in her life. Her boss, her mentor, a mutual friend who had once told me, "Lauren's so put together. You're lucky to have her." I never said a word. Just let the facts speak. I didn't accuse. I showed. I let the version of her that she'd spent years building crack under its own weight. Because when someone invests that much energy into crafting a perfect facade, the worst thing you can do isn't scream. It's expose. Quietly, ruthlessly, truthfully. The final message I received from her came 3 days later. Just 2 words. Why him? No greeting. No sign-off. No explanation of who him even was. Maybe she meant my lawyer. Maybe she meant the friend who gave me the loft. Maybe she meant the version of myself I'd become. Calm, calculated, unmoved. I didn't respond, because the answer didn't matter. She had started a war, and I had simply chosen to win it, without ever lifting my voice. I wasn't the clueless husband anymore. With everything gathered, emails, messages, location logs, financial evidence, I gave it all to my lawyer. We built a clean, chronological narrative. She thought I'd crumble. Instead, I flipped the script. Quietly, I sent the evidence to the attorney who'd been advising her. The next morning, I got an email. Our professional relationship with Ms. Kessler has been terminated. That's when I knew the damage hit. Her circle began to shrink. The people who once believed her started asking questions. And I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. The truth had its own gravity. And once it started falling, there was no pulling it back. 1 month later, I sold the last of our shared furniture. Canceled everything with her name on it. Got rid of the car. Changed my number. Moved out of the city. In Sonoma, I started over. No one knew my story. I lived simply, quietly, honestly. I met Julie at a bookstore. She didn't ask about my past. She just listened when I spoke. I wasn't trying to prove anything anymore. Lauren's betrayal didn't just break something. It freed me from pretending. Her lies gave me clarity. And for the first time in years, I finally felt real. I didn't just survive it. I was alive again.